Okay, great. Great. Well, thanks. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see the presentation. Um, and I'm very happy to talk about marketing. I have this cover image that marketing is what they don't teach you about tech transfer. I tested this. This is actually true. There's a group that Autumn does, an email group for directors of tech transfer offices. And so I had AI go through it and tell me what do we actually discuss in there. And it was material transfer agreements, interinstitutional agreements, hiring students, all these things, but no marketing topics. So I don't know. I think we're just not comfortable with it, or there's not a tradition about talking about it, but we definitely need to talk about it. So we'll do some of that. Okay, I want to give you a little, whoa, we're going to back right up. Um, a little credibility check on me here. So in 2024, I've been doing tech transfer. I've been in our office at BYU for 15 years, and I've been the director for the past 3 years. In 2024, or actually 2023, we started experimenting with different marketing things. And our thinking is we want to make type 1 errors, not type 2 errors. In our office, if people try things and they don't work, that's totally fine. The problem is going to be if people don't try things because we'll run a bunch of experiments and then we'll just go with the winners. So we started doing marketing things in 2023. I wanted to launch, this is a number of startups launched, by the way, at BYU. And I wanted to launch 25 startups in 2024. And we tried so hard and we didn't do it. It was seven. It was like a typical year. A typical year for us is maybe 5 to 8. People wander in the office and want to launch a startup and it happens. But that year we got some systems in place. And so last year we had, this is a conservative number, but we'll say 25 startups. And then this year we're at least 24 so far. So if you project that forward, probably end up with 72. We seem to be getting better over time. So I think we'll do better than that. But the point is, this is all due to the things I'm about to tell you about. This is all because of the marketing. That's the only thing that's changed in a meaningful way. All right. So first, just some principal foundational ideas about commercializing tech transfer. One is that we're not selling commodity items. So if we had a pallet full of widgets that we were starting to sell, then all the books about marketing products would be helpful for us. We could run an online promotion. If the conversion rate gets high enough, we would just lean into that, put a bunch of money into it, and sell all those widgets. But we're not. Tech transfer is way more like an art gallery. The things we're selling are one-off, they're curated, they're unique, and they're not for everyone. There's one buyer that we're trying to connect with. And so we have to do really targeted campaigns. It also means that if we think of our marketing as a campaign for a technology, we have to create a new campaign for each individual technology. There can't just be a blanket approach. I actually have tried a blanket approach. On LinkedIn, I've tried promoting just our dashboard, our listing of technologies. But the reality is, most people aren't going to want to flip through a ton of technologies. They want to be served up an opportunity that is a hit for them. So we have to present things in the right way. Okay. So in any marketing, though, you kind of start by knowing what the thing you're selling is worth. So what is a startup worth to your university? Have you ever done that calculation? Like we should start with that. And by the way, throughout the presentation, I'm talking about marketing to launch startups. The principles all apply to marketing to established companies as well. So what's a startup worth? And even if you're hyper conservative on your numbers and remove all outliers from the equation, I'm just going to guess that at your university, you're going to come up with at least $10,000 as a value of a startup. So what that means is if you could pay less than 10,000 and get a startup, then it would be worth doing, right? So, but here's how we do marketing typically. We receive a technology from a professor. This is path number one, the traditional way. Then we spend, say, $20,000 to $30,000 on patenting, and then maybe we license it. You know the stat from Autumn that 85% of tech transfer offices aren't break even, don't support themselves. I think this is why. And this is we're not crazy. There's a reason we do it the traditional way, and it's because of the way Bayh-Dole happened, because of federal incentives on federally funded technology, and maybe because of tradition a little bit. But but you can easily get in a place here where you've paid more for a patent than you could recover from an average startup. So a leaner approach would be to start with a new technology, spend less than $10,000 promoting it, say spend $5,000 marketing it within that first, 10 to 12 months. And then if there's no interest, we just won't proceed with patenting. I know that's easier said than done, and we've all had this thought, but this is way more doable than ever before in the past. So this is kind of aspirational where we'd like to be. All right. One other thought is, as in all things, we need to track the right metrics. So I'm going to talk about LinkedIn marketing a little bit. And my best post ever on LinkedIn is the one on the left. It got 170,000 impressions. It was a joke. I thought it was funny. Apparently, some other people thought it was funny. It was good and exciting for me for a few days. but it didn't move the dial at all. It didn't do anything in terms of licensing, didn't get anyone interested in any of our technologies. So you could see it as maybe kind of a waste of time. Where there was another one portrayed on the right there that got maybe 2,000 impressions and resulted in 15 interested parties reaching out. And so, and I think we're signing the agreement on that one right now. So even though it was less noticeable, no one on LinkedIn noticed that something special had happened for us. It was a great outcome of what we're actually after. So when you're doing any kind of marketing campaign, you need to think about metrics that matter. Someone engaging and asking about technology is a good result. The ultimate result is actually getting a deal. So that's what we need to focus on. All right, so here's actually how we're going to do marketing. There are four parts of marketing. This is at least what seems to work for us. So there's the outreach piece, the product itself, the offer, and then velocity, speed of getting things done. So let's just zip through those for a second. So pillar number one, the outreach engine. Most of us, I don't know what your background is. I was a law firm attorney, and then I went to MBA school and entered tech transfer. I'm like Spencer was saying, when COVID happened, my wife and I looked at each other and we're like, we were made for this. Like I'm pretty introverted, not naturally putting myself out in front of people. And so, but what I realized early on here is that to get tech transfer, to get technologies licensed, we got to be out in public. People have to know that we exist. And for years, for my first 12 years of tech transfer, I felt like people just weren't aware of my office. That's still the case, but less so. And so, like I say, we were doing a bunch of experiments. We did a lot of social media things. I'm not portraying all of them. We did email lists and things too, with some moderate success. One that made a difference for us was launching our podcast. So far, we're 130 episodes in. It's on YouTube. We have a pretty good episode from this last week about a tool for Major League Baseball teams to improve their performance. And it's a student startup. Anyway, and we got up to 30,000 YouTube subscribers with some random good things happening. However, it wasn't awesome for marketing. It was good for awareness. It was a good exercise, just not great for marketing. But the reason it was so important is because it got the members of our office, all of us, to go out there in public about what we do. And, the first few episodes we did audio only because we didn't want to be on video. It's still, how painful it is to hear a recording of your voice. And it's even worse when it's video and you're like, I actually look like that. But so it wasn't necessarily fun to do. It was important because it got us out there representing it. And, in the org chart, tech transfer in a university, we're somewhere down in the middle of the org chart. But if you drew your own novel org chart of technologies and research for the university, tech transfer would be at the top and everyone else would be supporting it in some way. So you have to think about it that way. If someone's going to be the face of technology for your university, it's you. And so you just got to step into that role and we need to like go public in that sense. But we tried a bunch of different things. Ultimately, we landed on LinkedIn as being very helpful. So I post on LinkedIn pretty much every day. I like doing it. Initially, if you're just getting started on a social media platform, which I think you should do, it doesn't have to be LinkedIn. You could probably do Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or something else. For professionalism, there are lots of good reasons to use LinkedIn. Most Americans are not in the workforce, but those who are strongly on LinkedIn. The people you want to connect with are probably there. Anyway, if you want to get started, just initially weekly post a success story from your office. Just post a story that people wouldn't necessarily know about a technology from your office that succeeded. And people love that. Your alumni love that, and you'll connect with the right people. I don't have a huge following. I have 3,500 followers on LinkedIn. That's grown. That's double what it was a year ago. I was not a strong LinkedIn user before then, but it's enough. I do posts about our technologies, very specifically calling out what I want. I'm looking for an entrepreneur to license something, and overwhelmingly we get responses and license things. If you on LinkedIn, you can also boost posts. So even if you don't have a lot of connections and you want to get something out there, you can pay to boost. Initially, I was doing some large boosts as an experiment, but for like $100, you could probably reach, a couple thousand people with your technology, and you can target it pretty well. So think about doing that. Okay, so that's outreach. We got to outreach in some way. We got to be out there for people. Second, bridging the product gap. This is probably the best part, the most underutilized aspect of tech transfer. I believe tech transfer offices should do prototyping. And what happened for us that was nice is Bennett Mortenson's our head engineering guy, and he had run a prototyping company before he joined the office 3 years ago. And so when he got there, he looked at some technologies and thought, these aren't really close to market, but I could work with some student employees and actually create physical products. And he started doing that. And in my experience, the difference between a technology that gets licensed and one that doesn't is usually how close it is to the market, how market ready it is. And so for engineering, this really worked. And then I'm the head of our software licensing. So I thought, well, wait a second, software should be even easier to prototype. So I hired a couple outside software development companies that were pretty low cost to develop some software for us, and that resulted in a couple deals. But then a little over a year ago, some great AI coding tools came along, and I thought, wow, we could just have students here doing it. Even a student with no programming experience could come and create software prototypes. So I started doing that, and it made a huge difference on software licensing. You'll see in the bottom right of the screen, it says the co-creation hack. It also made it so that we could reach out to professors outside of the STEM fields and say, look, we've looked at your research. There's something you could create here. Our students will code it for you and then create an actual product that would be very close to the market. One way or another, though, whatever you can do to get technologies there, that increases the likelihood of success. So I'm talking about engineering and software. You might wonder, how could we ever do this with life sciences technologies? And we have a pilot going this summer where we've paid for a couple students in the lab specifically to develop a simple life sciences technology for commercial application. And so we'll see if some micro grants can get us there on life sciences also. But bridging the product gap, hugely important. And then the offer. I don't know if you listen to Alex Hormozy. He's kind of a business influencer, very, very good at being public on the social media channels. And he says that you should create an irresistible offer. If you structured your offer right, like no one will be able to say no. So for example, what if you were offering technologies and the deal was, okay, you get the technology for free, plus we pay you $1 million cash. Obviously, everything would be licensed instantly, right? That would be such a sweet deal. And we can't quite do that. We can't afford to do that. But what could we do that would be closer in that direction? So there are a few things I've done to sweeten our deals, or my office has done. Um, One is Taylor Bench actually suggested things like this. I start when I hand a student entrepreneur a technology, it's usually a simple software technology. I also give them a list of prospects, people they can call who might want to buy it. And typically I'm aiming for a list of 500 prospects. So the idea is, here's your technology, here's your list of prospects. You can just start calling people and see if there's something there. And so that's valuable to them. The terms of the agreement itself are, of course, super important. Here's how we do our deals. I'm not saying this is the right way. This is just what we do. Right now, we do $0 upfront, 5% royalty, and 10% dilutable equity in most cases. And the way I sell that to people is that, listen, you can take one of our technologies for a ride. Maybe millions of dollars have been invested in this technology, depending on what it is, but you can take the tech for a ride for free. So just take this thing out. After a few months, if you don't like it, you can terminate and give it back. And also, if there are patent costs in a deal, we push those out a year. We give them a year to pay those back. So there's literally no cash drain up front. And then, if we can find other ways to help them, we do that too. All right. So yeah, this is just outlining what we do to remove friction. Um, Oh, here's another thing that helps for students. It took me so long to realize this, but students are often hesitant to sign startup deals because they'll have to form a legal entity and they've never done that and it costs money. So we give them a 6-month period in which to set up their LLC. And I tell them, look, if you're 6 months in, you'll know whether this is a go or not. If it isn't, then cancel, terminate the agreement. But if it is, then set up your LLC at that point. And so that seems to work pretty well. Okay, final point, process velocity. So when you hear people complain about tech transfer offices, it's almost always the speed. It's almost always people saying, look, I negotiated with them, but 8 months later, we still don't have a signed deal. And so we just can't do that. If we make our deals very standard, we can do them quickly. On my campus, there's a period where I have to circulate an agreement for approvals for 7 days. It used to take way longer. There were some people who were taking a long time to review things. So we worked to kind of get them off the review list and to simplify the process. But we can draft an agreement really quickly, circulate for 7 days, and then sign. So 8 days, I think, is reasonable. I wish it were faster, but right now I have a hard limit. Think of it as a physical limit that I can't get past. So that's what it is. But definitely spending months on a deal is just really frustrating for entrepreneurs. So we have to avoid alienating them. All right. Here's a bonus, not one of the 4 pillars, but a bonus thing to think about. When I talk to students, what if you think about tech transfer as having a series of bottlenecks that make commercialization hard? One bottleneck is invention disclosures up front. We're kind of sitting and waiting for inventions to come. And if you're willing to reach out and co-develop with professors, you can largely solve that one. Another bottleneck is entrepreneurs. If we're trying to launch startups, yeah, we can reach people on LinkedIn, but where could we find a huge stable of entrepreneurs to license things? And an obvious answer is your student body. It says 34,000 because that's how many BYU students there are. But do you think 10% of them want to be entrepreneurs? Definitely yes. So that's thousands of options. I tell students, skipped over it. I tell students that chart on the right that they have 8 semesters as a student. The first semester, they're wandering around dazed and confused, but the other 7 semesters, they should be able to take a shot at 2 startups per semester. I haven't had any student totally take me up on that yet, but it helps them understand that these are low pressure activities. We need to demystify launching a startup if we want it to happen more, right? So here's some ways we engage with students. We have Taco Tuesdays once a month. We just give away tacos in our office. There's no strings attached. Come by and eat a taco if you're a student. And that's a good use of our student list. Lots of people come. And we find that in many cases, students have multiple visits to our office before they actually start engaging about tech transfer, but it does happen. I found you always think of engaging with the entrepreneurship students, but if you have one, the sales society is really great. They just want to take a product and sell it, and they're fantastic. We have an entrepreneurship center that gives grants. And then here's a licensing technique you might not have thought of: student employees. I've hired a couple students before specifically where I said, look, I'm going to hire you for the summer, but I want you to work on this technology, and then I want you to license it at the end of the summer. That's the deal. So totally fine to tell them what you want and that you want them to be an entrepreneur. They'll either take the job or they don't. But if they do, you've hired an employee. When you hire students for other purposes, many of them will actually end up licensing from you also, in my experience. All right. So one thing we should all be wondering is, well, how do you pay for this? And this is a policy issue to work out in universities. I mean, the short answer is you need to find some way to pay for it. But say we're doing $100 boost on LinkedIn. At BYU a few years ago, when we changed the IP policy, we made it so that when a deal succeeds, we can recover not just patent costs, but also marketing costs. That was a key breakthrough because now if I pay for a LinkedIn campaign, after the technology generates some income, that'll be reimbursed. And so that makes everyone feel a little better about spending on social media. All right. So those are the pieces. I think I hustled through it so we would keep to the 15-minute timeline, which I think I've done. And I believe we're in Q&A, Spencer.
We are.
Okay.
So this is the time. You can come off mute or you can put it into the chat. But questions for Dave. Be hard hitting. He's an introvert, so he really likes to be, put on the spot.
You know what? Despite that, I was a litigator. Like I can take it. If you agree completely, you can tell me that. Or disagree completely, rather.
Dave, while people are putting their question in the chat, I'll just echo that you are the fastest office that we have done a license with. I think it took 2 weeks, start to finish,
Good.
where other offices we've worked with, it has taken 18 months. So you are the gold winner for us in terms of speed to license.
Thanks, Taylor. And that's heartwarming. That's like I see that as user experience. You think of who your users are. The ultimate user for us is the licensee. So if that was a good experience, that was awesome.
Question from Mike. Undergrad versus grad students, Dave?
Oh yeah. So you work with what you have, and so we have BYU has disproportionately more undergraduate students than graduate students. Also, though, I found like I'm an MBA myself, but often when you're working with graduate students, so I'm thinking MBAs here, they have plans and like big dollar opportunities. So they'll work with you for a couple of years, but once it's time to go off and do something else, they're gonna have some other compelling things they want to do. So in my experience, it's a little easier to work with undergrads, even though they have less experience, they kind of make up for it and hustle. But we'll take all comers. Like anyone can come and license, and we'll be happy about it.
Okay. Robert asked, how do the terms change if you're negotiating with an existing company?
Yeah, that's really hard. So sometimes we see it as a sliding scale. So since I'm in software, royalties can be much higher than 5% and still make sense. So sometimes I'll just increase. There have been a number of deals where I've said, okay, no equity, just 10% royalty. So that's an option. You can do other things that are like equity or a substitute for it. The equity is meant to be like an upfront fee. So you can charge an actual cash upfront fee, and a major corporation is going to want to do that. In fact, they'll want to just pay cash one time and be done with the thing. And that's fine as long as the number's fair. But yeah, it's a sliding scale and we'll do whatever. But you're right to point out that an established company will almost never give you equity.
Cameron, you want to come off mute and ask your question?
Yeah, sure. So I know you do all your marketing through your personal LinkedIn. Did you consider like getting an office LinkedIn account, and why did you not go that route?
Okay, thanks, Cameron. Good to see you. And the yeah, so we had an official BOE. I had a note there down there about how you shouldn't be beholden too much on one account, and we had an office LinkedIn account until like a year and a half ago, and it was good. It had like 8,000 subscribers, all BOU alums probably, so really good for us. And then someone in the office changed the contact information for it, and LinkedIn canceled it immediately. And so I contacted LinkedIn. I said, like, what happened here? And they said, well, the person who set this up didn't do it the right way. I'm like, okay, but we're an organization and this and that. And no, they just weren't going to budge. So that was gone. And LinkedIn does favor, or at least has favored recently, personal accounts. And also, I do think having posted from both, people respond better to your personal account. They want to think they're talking with a person as opposed to an entity. So I kind of think it's better to do personal, but we were forced to that conclusion.
Okay, great, thank you. And then, real quick, do you get reach outside of your connections very much, or is it mostly just your connections that you hear from?
Oh, let's see. I would say, yeah, I don't know what the percentages are. A large percentage of the time, maybe most of the time, I'm hearing from someone who's not a connection. Like they'll see the post and then they'll become a connection and then reach out about something. That's especially true, of course, if you boost a post because then people anywhere are going to see it. But even if I don't, it's often not connections. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, but sometimes what will happen is when you do a deal, often it's going to be someone that you personally know in real life. And then you're like, well, it's kind of silly that I post on LinkedIn, then they saw it, then they talk to me. But otherwise, how would they know? You're not going to bring it up in every conversation. So,
Sure, yeah. Awesome, thanks. Great
yeah.
presentation.
Oh, thanks, Cameron.
Okay, we'll go to Brandon.
Thanks, guys. So you made a really salient point that 85% of tech transfer offices lose money, which seems kind of crazy to my business brain.
Mhm.
How did you kind of, I guess, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but like, why is that the norm and accepted? And then how did you go about broaching with your team and university to like, hey, there's a big opportunity here to turn this from a cost center into a profit center, and we need to really do that. So how did you kind of like get that paradigm shift to begin?
Yeah, I think that's great. So, first part of the question, I think there's some historical and institutional things that make tech transfer not be super profitable. And one is there's often pressure to file patents because of federal regulations. The buy dole. If we don't do something here, we're going to lose rights. And because professors want their ideas protected, even though they might not have thought through the commercialization part. Not a criticism, it's just the reality. And so every university will have a horror story or two of investing 6 digits or maybe more, like 7 digits in a portfolio and getting no return ever, like patenting with nothing there. And so really the answer to that is probably speed. Just make decisions faster, examine the thing faster. And if you tell a professor we got this technology in front of 10,000 people on LinkedIn and we just didn't get a response, they'll understand, oh, well, maybe it's less commercial than I thought, or it's just not ready yet or something. In terms of getting people on board, I'm very fortunate that I have is basically like an AVP, VP, and the president above me. Our president right now, Shane Reese, was one of our inventors. So the administration understands us like never before, and they've been super supportive. I also avoid asking for permission when I don't have to. If something's squarely within tech transfer's purview, I'm just going to do it. And so social media, there were a couple things like I was well into the podcast when I learned that there was a social media policy at the university and that I might not be fully in compliance. And so then I got into compliance, but I just wanted to err on the side of doing things. Thanks, Brandon.
Harmon, your question.
Yeah, thanks for this great presentation. Really enjoying it. I was curious. So you talked about kind of your 8-day cycle, hello to signed license. Is that across the entire office? Is that just on the software side of things? And then follow-up question, when you were kind of going to that streamline approach, what were some of the more creative things that you worked out to get that time frame down to just, a week?
Yeah. Okay, great question. Yeah. And so like I think, Harmon, you're anticipating, it was a series of small changes, like over a couple of years to get us there. And so in terms of streamlining, the first thing, it was taking months to get things signed. And there was one person in particular, where our IP policy says you have to send the agreement to this person, and this person, like 5 approvers or something. But there was one person who had asked for access and was slowing everything down. So we just stopped sending it there. And so that solved that really quick. But then for the others, we had a process where you would send it to someone, you'd kind of wait to hear back or check with them. It was very labor intensive. So we started sending out just an email that said, look, here's what the deal is. In the interest of time, if we don't hear back from you within 7 days, we'll assume you have no objections. And so then that's how attorneys, like in private practice, I did that too, where just give them a deadline and most people are going to be apathetic, maybe not respond. And so instantly we're down to 7 days there. In terms of whether it's across the office or not, definitely it works really well in software and engineering. Sometimes in life sciences, things are so much more capital intensive that it can be a little harder to get outside parties to move fast. But internally, I would say it's pretty standard at this point. Great question.
And then
Thanks.
if I can, Dave, a quick follow-up. How in that process are all these like custom negotiated, and I put custom in quotes, or are you also relying on some strong template agreements?
Yeah, definitely strong template agreements. And I've tried to simplify that like crazy over time. So we had, okay, here's one advantage we have that other universities wouldn't have, that a small percentage of our, something like a quarter of our research funding is federal funding. So at most universities, it's going to be much higher than that. If you don't have federal funding, you can do outright sales. And so you can with federal funding if you get agency approval, but in our experience, that takes about a year to do. So we have more technologies than most universities that can just be sold outright. So that's a very simple transaction. We have an agreement for that. By the way, if you have research funds, though, that are from an endowment or something that are not federal, you should maybe consider doing that. Outright sales are so much easier and require less management in the future. But that's one thing. But yeah, I mean, we have a number of templates. We've just tried to make the whole thing as simple and require as little negotiation as possible. There have been a few provisions over time that constantly resulted in pushback from parties and didn't provide us a lot of value. So we just got rid of them.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Norman.
Dave, question from Suniti. Aside from LinkedIn, other platforms, other channels that you've tested?
Yeah, we had some interns try Instagram for a while, and I'm just probably never going to understand Instagram. And it was just kind of things are different platforms require a different level of maintenance. Oh, we've tried X.com as well, and they're reaching a lot of people is easier. The problem with it is that most of the people who read it are either not in the workforce or not in the part of the workforce that you're interested in. So LinkedIn just has this inherent targeting that is really good. I do feel like it's on the back burner for me that I need to figure out X.com at some point because since the spread goes so well, there is an opportunity there. And also repurposing content. There's a good argument that you should be on every platform. And when you're posting on LinkedIn, maybe you're optimizing content there, but why not have it automatically post to every other platform? And so, for example, for video clips, I use Opus Clip, which is a great tool, and it'll connect with various social media accounts. So you can just click go on a clip from a video and have it automatically post to a bunch of different platforms. Why don't I do that? I don't know. Right now, I only use it for YouTube and LinkedIn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sophie asked about feedback from venture investors on the terms. How did the university justify a royalty and the equity to investors and potential founders?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a great question. And so it's going to come up, especially Silicon Valley VCs are not going to like the equity there. The theoretically, and this is just my thinking, like feel free to disagree or draw lines in different places, but there are two things that could happen with the company you launch. Hopefully it'll exit and then equity is all that matters. And most of the time that's the case for us. I think royalties are mostly illusory, at least for us they are. We have a few companies that consistently pay a high royalty, but not a lot. And so equity is there to protect the exit. But we've also had companies that have been cash cows where the same person runs them for 30 years. And so all you ever get is the royalty. So it kind of protects us against either of those outcomes. But I have said for a long time, if we wanted to fully optimize economically, we would do all equity deals all the time. But yeah, VCs probably wouldn't like that. When one of our companies is acquired, we usually negotiate out the royalty, and so we get our equity payout, and that's it.
Awesome. Okay. Brave souls, we've got time for probably one or two more questions.
Right.
You can just come off mute if you have a question.
Can you double click a little bit on some of those VC conversations and what are they like as these companies are getting more mature and trying to raise some more outside capital for maybe growth or whatever? Like how are those conversations kind of going?
Oh, let's see. Yeah, and equity isn't our only option. Sometimes we'll take a percent of exit instead. So, and that's some people like that more, some people don't. But that gets us off the cap table, so we're not an equity holder. So we have this contingent future contractual issue. Some VCs seem to like that, but some really hate it. So it kind of just depends on preference. But what we want to do and the way those conversations actually go is I believe we're extremely reasonable. So when a VC comes along and says, look, the only way this deal works is if you get rid of this provision, we want the deal to work. So unless it's completely crazy, we're just going to do it. But I've got to say, like, pretty much everyone has been good to work with. I can't think of a contentious conversation really.
I
So
really like your prototype idea where you're pushing forward the with the first step of the prototype, and I'm curious, how did you get um, people to participate in that, and how do you pay for that
yeah.
to get that ball? That's a big ball to get rolling.
Yeah. So on the software side, all you have to figure out how to do is pay the student salaries and then some small AI tools. We use Lovable, Supabase, GitHub, um, Cursor a bit, Claude a bit. So the total cost of all of that is, a fraction of the student wages. And the reason I hadn't done software development in-house before is because I don't know how to do software development. But then when the no-code tools came along, I thought, wait, anyone could do this though. And so I hired some students to kind of figure it out. And I'm willing to hire anyone who's super motivated, but it's turned out that I have 20 students doing this summer. And of those, 18 are computer science or information system students. So they're actually technically really good, even though they're using these other tools. But I have, let's see, I'm not sure if this is open or not.
And I
Well,
guess
okay.
really, I was talking about the
The,
non-software. I mean, I
yeah,
get the
okay.
software is pretty easy to do now with AI and all that.
Yeah.
How far has it gone out with physical products or
Yeah. So
engineering?
there we really benefit from the fact that Bennett in my office has run a prototyping company. I do think probably most offices could find an alumnus who's a product manager or a prototyper or something who would be helpful. But there we have uh, in our engineering building, they have a lot of prototyping. It's like a maker space, and probably many universities have those at this point. So if you're willing to do rough prototypes, there are machines to do it. You just need to find someone who can do it. And mechanical engineering students or other engineering students will be able to do that. It's Bennett's supervision has been really important because when you're starting out, they're just things that you don't think about. But and then he also has lined up, he's talked to local manufacturers and gotten supply chains lined up for products that we're ready to license. So yeah, we really benefit from having someone with expertise there. If you're when you're hiring new people for your office, I think with every hire you try to get someone with new skills that are going to improve the office. And so getting someone who could do prototyping like that was super helpful. But if you don't have that, I would probably turn to alumni. I bet you've got someone.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Dave. So the last question, we'll go to Brandon had this in the chat, but I know you've got venture studios coming to you, Dave. Do you have VCs that ever come directly to you and they're asking about tech?
Yeah, we do. And it's yeah, we do. And it's tough. I bet every office has these discussions where a venture capitalist talk to us directly and we're like going back and forth about each other's needs. And these are always interesting people. I like the venture world. It's super interesting. But then you get to a point where you're like, okay, all our technologies are too early for you. You need a company. How early are you willing to invest? And maybe we can identify some companies in that strata. But it's hard to create with venture studios, you can create a pipeline that's really consistent. Like I've shared with some venture studios our dashboard for technologies, right? But with someone who's further down the road, it's just hard to know exactly how to do that. One thing we do have in Utah, we also have Nucleus, the state investment group. They're pretty good to interact with because they're super early stage. But yeah, most of the time, you just wish you could be more involved, but they're a little too far away.
Great.
Mhm.
Thanks, Dave, so much for sharing today and
Yeah,
for
thanks,
the
guys.
Q&A. And you all, thanks for sharing your LinkedIn profiles. It's great. You can easily find Dave on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
And this is great. We're here every Tuesday. Please join us next week, and we'll see you then.
Thanks,
thanks,
Dave.
guys.